Hello, I'm David Newsome and I work with the Christian organisation Hands at Work in Africa. The other day we were talking to our next door neighbour, in a socially distanced kind of way of course, and we were discussing the plans that there were at that stage to reopen the schools. And our conversation ranged over a whole load of topics, over the current infection rate, the so-called R number, the dangers of a second peak, and the trials of shopping and the queues at Tesco's. And I have to say that we all ended up quite depressed. I don't know how it is for you, but I find it very difficult at the moment to stop conversations like this spiralling downwards into depression and pessimism. And yet in the gospel, we hear Jesus sending out his disciples with the words, "As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near." We are called to be proclaimers of the gospel, literally good news. So what is the good news today in a COVID-19 world? And how are we to live it? I heard a very interesting interview recently. It was with the American founder of the Christian organisation, the International Justice Mission. As a young lawyer, he had to investigate the terrible genocide in Rwanda on behalf of the UN. It was a horrific experience that changed his life and set him on course to fight for justice, working to abolish modern slavery and child exploitation in particular. The interviewer asked him how he coped with all the terrible things that he'd witnessed and was working against. His reply stopped me in my tracks. "Joy is the oxygen that sustains us," he said. And I've thought about this a lot since, but I know I've witnessed it as well. Our organisation, Hands at Work, works in some of Africa's poorest and most isolated communities, with the most vulnerable children. And despite these enormous challenges, I've witnessed the most astonishing joy amongst our African volunteers. How on earth is that possible? Let me try and give some pointers from the things I've learned from our volunteers and things that I've witnessed that might enable us to live more as people of hope and bearers of the good news. Firstly, let us always remind ourselves where we are headed. Jesus calls us to proclaim the good news of the kingdom. And under God's rule, there will come a time, in the words of the book of Revelation, where sorrow and pain are no more. When God will wipe away every tear from our eyes, and death will be no more. Secondly, let's celebrate every bit of good news. St. Paul tells us to abound with thanksgiving. And it may be giving thanks to God for something as simple as a kind greeting of someone in the street, or for the key workers who serve us every day. But in it all, abound with thanksgiving. Thirdly, continue to pray. There is so much to pray for at the moment. And the pages of the New Testament abound with exhortations to persevere in prayer. Prayer is the lifeblood of change. Fourthly, bring pictures of hope. Tell stories, however simple, that tell a narrative of hope. like the senior manager of a supermarket chain in Birmingham I met this week, who after work, 6 nights a week, volunteers delivering food parcels to vulnerable families. Tell these stories of hope. Finally, look for every opportunity to encourage each other. The Epistle to the Thessalonians talks about the importance of encouraging and building each other up. The literal meaning of the word benediction, blessing, is to speak good words. Let's build each other up with good words of encouragement. If we pray for the grace of God to do these things, then joy will become the oxygen that sustains us and brings light to the world, even in these times of COVID. Amen.